All right, so are you ready to dive into a real mystery today?
I'm all ears.
It's one of those cases that just grabs you and it just won't let go.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
The disappearance of Frederick Valentich, a young pilot who vanished back in 1978.
Over Bay Strait, right?
Yep, and what makes this so interesting is it's not just a plane disappearing.
No.
We have Valentich's own words, his radio calls, describing a strange object.
Before he went silent.
Yeah, and then nothing, no trace.
Poof, gone. Just like that.
And that's where all this source material comes in.
Oh, really?
We've got declassified Australian government documents, accident reports,
Wow.
witness statements, meteorological data.
We're going to unpack all of that.
We're going to see if we can make any sense of what happened that night.
So we're like detectives then.
Exactly. Think of us as your guides through this whole maze of information.
All right, I like that.
We'll point out the most interesting details, and we'll explore all the different explanations for Valentich's disappearance.
Sounds good to me.
So let's start by setting the scene, October 21st, 1978.
Okay.
A little after 6 p.m., 20-year-old Frederick Valentich takes off from Moorabbin Airport.
In his Cessna.
Yep, a Cessna 182 headed for King Island. Seems like a routine flight, right?
Yeah, totally routine.
Well, on the surface, yes.
Okay.
But remember, this was a young pilot, only about 150 to 200 flying hours logged.
So relatively inexperienced.
Exactly. And while he did have a Class 4 instrument rating, meaning he could fly at night in good weather.
Which it was, right?
Perfect conditions, clear skies, great visibility.
So the weather wasn't a factor.
Not at all. But here's where things get a little strange.
Okay.
About an hour into his flight, while he's over Bay Strait, Valentich radios Melbourne Flight Service.
Oh.
And let's just say his voice does not sound like he's making a routine call.
You've heard the recording.
Oh yeah, it's one of those recordings that sends chills down your spine.
I can only imagine.
Valentich reports seeing this unidentified aircraft above him.
Above him?
Yeah, he describes it as having bright lights moving erratically.
At an incredible speed, too.
That's right. And he even says it's hovering and playing games.
Playing games? That's a little creepy.
And remember we mentioned his Class 4 rating?
Yeah.
That allowed him to fly at night, but it also meant he was more reliant on visual cues for navigation.
So imagine being a young pilot alone at night
Yeah.
and suddenly encountering something you can't explain.
It's no wonder he sounded panicked.
Yeah, and to make things even worse, his last transmission mentions engine trouble.
Right. And then
Nothing.
Silence.
They launched a search, right?
A massive search covered a huge area of Bay Strait, but nothing.
No wreckage.
No debris, no sign of Valentich or his plane.
He just vanished.
It really is like something out of the Twilight Zone.
And this is even before we get to the really strange stuff.
You mean the fact that Valentich was fascinated by UFOs?
More than fascinated.
This guy had a confidential RAAF file on UFO sightings.
Wow, okay, so that adds a whole new dimension to this story.
It really does. What if Valentich's interest in UFOs wasn't just a hobby?
What if it played a role in his disappearance?
That's exactly what a lot of people believe, and it gets even weirder.
Weirder. No.
Turns out there were multiple UFO sightings reported in that area.
The Bass Strait area.
Yeah, in the days leading up to Valentich's flight.
So other people were seeing something too?
Witnesses describe seeing an object, just like what Valentich described, bright lights, fast movements, the whole 9 yards.
What did they think it was?
One witness even mentioned a long, metallic, windowless tube shape.
So we have this young pilot obsessed with UFOs flying at night.
Yeah.
He reports a strange object. He sounds panicked, mentions engine trouble, and then vanishes.
What do you make of all that?
Well, it's definitely a puzzle, and like any good puzzle,
There are a lot of pieces.
we got to fit them all together.
Yeah. But before we jump into all the possible explanations,
Yeah.
I think it's important to understand what spatial disorientation is.
So good point. That's important.
Spatial disorientation sounds kind of technical.
Well, it is a bit technical, but it's crucial to understanding what might have happened to Valentich, especially given his reliance on visual cues that night.
Okay. So what is it?
Basically, it's when a pilot's perception of their position and motion in space doesn't match reality.
So they think they're flying one way, but they're actually flying another way.
Exactly. And it can happen to even the most experienced pilots, especially at night or over water where there are fewer visual references.
Oh, I see. So picture this. You're Valentich flying over the dark ocean,
Yeah.
fixated on this strange object with flashing lights moving erratically.
Easy to get disoriented.
You could say that again.
That could easily create a situation where his senses get tricked.
So he could have become disoriented, lost control of the plane, and crashed without even realizing what was happening.
It's definitely a possibility.
And I'm guessing the official investigation.
They considered that as a potential factor.
But that doesn't explain the object he reported.
No, it doesn't.
Which brings us back to the big question, was it a UFO?
I mean, that's the theory that many people gravitate toward, especially with his interest in UFOs and the other sightings in the area.
Right.
But we need to be careful not to jump to conclusions.
Okay, so what else could it have been?
Well, let's consider another possibility, one supported by Valentich's final transmission.
You mean mechanical failure?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Remember, he reported his engine was rough running.
Yeah, but couldn't that have been caused by, a UFO messing with his plane?
It's a fun thought for a sci-fi movie.
Right.
But let's stick to what we know about the Cessna 182.
Good.
These planes are generally reliable.
Yeah.
But they're not immune to engine problems.
And a sudden engine failure at night over water
would be disastrous.
So walk me through that. What would happen if his engine just quit?
Well, the Cessna has a single engine.
Right.
If that fails, you lose your primary source of thrust and the plane starts to descend.
And Valentich wouldn't have much time to react.
Especially in the dark. No, he might have tried to glide to a safe landing.
But over water?
Your options are pretty limited.
Okay, so engine failure explains the crash. But what about the strange object? Could he have mistaken something else for a UFO?
Like what?
Another plane, maybe? Or a helicopter?
Even a bright star.
It's possible, right?
Misidentification happens more often than you might think, especially under stress.
That's true. And remember, this was 1978.
A long time ago.
Before GPS and all those fancy radar systems.
Tracking aircraft back then
Wasn't as precise.
Not at all.
So maybe there was another aircraft in the area that just wasn't picked up on radar?
Could be.
And Valentich, already on edge, just misinterpreted what he saw.
It's possible, but let's not forget about the other witnesses who also reported seeing unusual objects around that same time.
Oh, that's true.
They were in a plane and they weren't experiencing engine trouble.
Good point. It seems like every time we try to fit one piece of the puzzle, another one pops out of place.
You got that right. It's a tangled web of intriguing details and so many unanswered questions.
And of course, there's another explanation.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it is less likely.
Intentional disappearance.
You mean he faked his own death?
It's not impossible. Some people believe he might have been facing personal challenges at the time and maybe he was trying to start a new life.
But wouldn't he have contacted someone eventually, like his family, his friends?
Yeah, you'd think so. And there's no evidence of him assuming a new identity or anything like that.
Right. It seems like a theory that doesn't have a lot of support.
It lacks any real substance, but we're trying to be thorough here and explore all the angles.
Yeah, no matter how improbable.
Right.
So we've got spatial disorientation, mechanical failure, even a faked disappearance.
And then there's the UFO theory.
So many possibilities, but no real answers.
Well, the Australian Department of Transport conducted a very thorough investigation.
It did.
But their final report was inconclusive.
Really?
They couldn't say for sure what caused Valentich's disappearance.
Wow, so it's still an open case.
An open case, a mystery that continues to fascinate and frustrate people in equal measure.
So after diving into all the details, the evidence, and all the theories, where do you land on all of this?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think that's what makes this case so interesting. It forces us to grapple with the unknown, to consider possibilities that might lie outside our comfort zones.
So do you believe it was a UFO?
I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm just here to present the facts and the possibilities and let you, the listener, draw your own conclusions.
Okay.
But I will say this, the Valentich case is a powerful reminder that there are still things in this world, in this universe, that we don't fully understand.
Like this giant question mark hanging over Bay Strait.
Exactly. And sometimes the most intriguing mysteries are the ones that stay unsolved.
That's for sure. So for all the listeners out there, think about everything we've discussed today, the young pilot, the strange object, the engine trouble, the lack of wreckage. What do you think happened to Frederick Valentich on that fateful night?
Yeah, it's a question people have been debating for decades now.
And it's inspired so many theories.
Oh, yeah, countless theories and speculation.
Right.
Did Frederick Valentich encounter something truly extraordinary, or...
Or was there a more simple explanation?
You know, it's fascinating to me.
What's that?
It's just how this case still captures our imaginations.
It really does.
I think it speaks to that curiosity we all have about the unknown.
That desire to make sense of things we don't understand.
Exactly. And it's not just, armchair detectives who are fascinated.
Right.
I mean, the Valentich case has been featured in books, Documentaries, TV shows,
It's everywhere.
it's become a part of our culture,
A touchstone for all these discussions about UFOs and aviation mysteries.
Yeah, it really has.
It's a story that resonates on so many levels.
Yeah, like what?
Well, on one hand, you've got that human element, the tragedy of a young man vanishing.
Leaving his family behind, searching for answers.
Exactly. And then you have that element of the unknown.
Yeah.
The possibility that something beyond our understanding might be at play.
It's a story that challenges us.
It makes us rethink what we thought we knew about reality,
Yeah. And forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge.
I think that's why, even after all these years,
This case is still going strong.
oh yeah, it continues to spark debate.
And new investigations.
This is a case that refuses to be forgotten.
It's like a ghost story, a mystery that just lingers in the air.
Whether you believe in UFOs,
Or you prefer a more grounded explanation.
there's no denying the power of this story.
No denying it at all.
It's a reminder that even with all our fancy technology,
All our sophisticated knowledge.
there are still mysteries out there we just can't explain.
Mysteries that defy all explanation.
So as we wrap up our deep dive today,
Into the Valentich disappearance.
we want to leave you with this.
What's that?
Keep questioning, keep exploring.
Then maybe,
Just maybe.
one day we'll finally uncover the truth.
The truth behind this enduring enigma.
Until then, the mystery remains.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.